Kenya, a multitude of mental health benefits were found from giving income supplements. Youth experienced 24% less depressive symptoms. Subpoint B is disease and poverty cycle. Rees in 15 states that poverty creates conditions for disease spread, trapping families in the cycle of poverty and disease, which doesn't mean economic growth. Poverty creates conditions that favor the spread of infectious disease and prevents affected populations from attaining adequate access to prevention and care. Ultimately, these diseases disproportionately affect people living in poor or marginalized communities. This creates a vicious cycle of poverty and disease. This is why we affirm. Thank you. And I'm over for class. I'll start time on your first word.
Right. So my first question is, how can you prove UBI will be successful by the example of other countries, like as you mentioned, Kenya or other countries?
Okay, I don't think it's really fair for you to say that we don't have any examples in Taiwan because Taiwan has never enacted UBI before. So I think that you saying that Taiwan doesn't have any examples is entirely unfair. But even so, we're going to provide some statistics in the next speech to why the poverty in Taiwan is so detrimental and why the welfare is not going to solve anything. Okay, so now my question. So I'd like to ask, you talked about how UBI will cost $2.2 trillion. Is this USD or NTD?
NTD.
Okay, so you're saying that 2.2 trillion. So doesn't this mean that as long as we meet 2.2 trillion, UBI could be implemented? Okay, yeah, sure. You can ask a question.
So what's your question? Do you have a question?
No, I already asked. It's just yeah, I already asked. You can ask.
Yeah, so what's your question? Maybe state it again.
But you answered it.
Okay. So my second question is that even you say that UBI is helping poverty people, but how can this project be sustained if the cost is so high that we can maintain this project?
Okay, I think we pretty much stated in our solvency argument how we're going to implement this, right? So first we tell you that there's taxation and anticipation. What this means that it's likely not going to have any inflation because we increase the demand because these businesses know that there's going to be more people buying their products. So the probability of inflation probably doesn't exist on our side. And second of all, we tell you that businesses will we tell you that the citizens will know the raising taxes. This tightens the wealth disparity between the rich and the poor because these rich people, they're going to have taxes, right? So when you tax the rich, you're going to get a lot of money. But when you tax the poor, it's likely that you're not going to feel as much because it's income. You tax their income. So what this means is that you're likely going to have the money from the rich, and plus when we increase taxes, we probably could meet this 2.2 trillion dollars. And even if we can't, we think that it's better to even have some sort of metric to and have some sort of safety net where these people can fall off after, because it's the only way to ensure that these people will actually have a chance to get out of poverty. Okay, so I'd like to ask how in your world would there be any solution to the current problem of poverty?
Yeah, so basically we're talking about the poverty and situation of UBI in Taiwan, right? So in Taiwan, we actually have a very low poverty rate comparing to other countries. So only 1% of people in Taiwan is considered as in a poverty situation. So this actually means that there's not a lot of poverty present in Taiwan to be solved.
Okay, thank you.
Rebuttal. Do you need prep time? If you are not going to upstay, I'm going to time you for the prep time. So do you want to use the prep time? Okay, so tell me when to stop. I will just start counting now.
Still very disappointed in myself for getting lost around here. It's not. No, it's not okay.
The past is in the past.
Yeah, my past self is walking down a dead alleyway. Time is
Yeah.
Oh no, it's super, it's really like this.
But the knowledge is like this.
Yeah.
But super fun to read, super well written. I gave it to a friend of mine that's in Hokkaido now because he likes going to test his level of luck. He's going to check out a volcano around there.
1 minute has passed.
But yeah, no, the idea of quantum is just like time itself. It's super fun. That's the thing. It looks hard, but it's not, because it goes nowhere. It's a
Okay.
construct.
All right.
So that the first point is that our taxes isn't enough for people to use because we still have many years to we need to provide UBI, but the taxes people pay isn't enough for all the citizens to have their basic needs in so much years. So, and the second point is that if we use too much money on this, it will cause inflation, and this will not resolve the problem we want to resolve initially, because if inflations happen, poor people will still be poor, and this does not solve the problem. And it is easy to see how the institution of UBI may fuel inflation, and if every individual is granted an unconditional income from the government, then there is money to be spent. Providing massive amounts of money to virtually every individual in the country translates to a massively expanded money supply. So that the taxes citizens pay to the government wouldn't be enough for the government to provide UBI for all citizens to have their basic incomes, like buy their basic needs for many years. And if UBI still continues, it will just cause the society it will cause the inflation to become more serious, and the poor people will still be poor, and the UBI will not resolve the problem. Yeah.
Do you need to use your prep?
Time will start in 3, 2, 1. First, I would like to make some clarifications. The Taiwan standard of poverty is literally if you have an income of more than 30 NTD per day, you will not be in poverty. This means that the poverty and welfare line is set extremely low so that people who need welfare will not be able to get any of the benefits. The current society is if you have a job to be in welfare, but if you have more than 30 NTD income, you cannot be in welfare. Essentially, this is why the welfare system in Taiwan is a facade, which is why UBI is so important. Now moving on to rebuttals. First, answering their argument on cost. They say that taxes are not enough, but we won't be just relying on taxes. The Roosevelt Institute in 2017 says that a full UBI will grow the economy by 12% by circulating the economy. It's also very intuitive that once people get money to invest in themselves and no longer have to go from paycheck to paycheck, people will start to spend money in the economy and increase their productivity at work. So they're not just taking money from the economy, but also giving back to it as well. And why will they be incentivized to do this? Our second contention already proved to you why lifting people out of poverty can increase their mental health, which will lead to better productivity during their work hours. And they're actually using it to better themselves and give back to the economy. And now answering their argument on inflation. While we do agree that there will be inflation, we think that inflation is going to be very short term because as people begin to spend more on the economy, producers are going to ramp up in production. Also, people with added salary will also add to the economy as was just provided. And second, there is an easy way to solve this problem. We can inform businesses about the plan beforehand, which means that businesses can adjust their supply in anticipation for the increase for demand later on. And also, as more people will get money to invest in themselves, it's more likely that they'll create businesses on their own, which means that they're going out and elevating themselves, increasing their productivity. And overall, this will increase the supply in the economy, and these entrepreneurship also means that the economy will be much more competitive, which will keep the prices at a reasonable place. Now moving on to their poverty argument. First, we do address the root cause of poverty. Our sub-point C under contention 1 says that UBI will cause generational improvement to areas such as drug addiction and crime. And there was also a $4,000 increase in household income that reduced the poorest kids' chances of committing a minor crime by 22%. So we solved the root cause of the problems, which is during like the childhood of like these people's times. And second, welfare in Taiwan cannot solve poverty because the threshold is just so low. The News Lens 22 shows that Taiwan uses a national poverty line of less than $1.9 a day instead of the upper middle income country poverty line of $5.5, thus underplaying the number of impoverished people in the nation, which means that the poor people won't benefit from UBI. The reality is that many people are struggling just above the poverty line in Taiwan. And next, if Khan comes up and says that Taiwan does not have a poverty issue because of the numbers are so low, they are just presenting the issue that Taiwanese welfare brings up. Now, answering the income inequality argument. So first, my opponents don't understand that rich people have to pay way more taxes than poor people. The fact that you give rich people the same amount as poor people just means that the rich will get taxed back and actually get less amount. Because comparatively, there's a marginal difference in the cost that like $1,000 matter to a rich person than a poor person. So through UBI, we actually give the poor a chance to level the playing field. Okay, thank you.
How can you make sure the economic growth will be enough to balance the cost of the UBI, considering UBI may cause inflation and cause people a lack of motivation?
But the lack of motivation is like the same on your side. Like there's also this thing like called the welfare trap, which means that people want to, because they want to receive the welfare, so they'll like stay below the line in order to receive the welfare they can get. While on the side of UBI, you'll be constantly motivated to improve yourself because there is no standard to where you can get the benefit from. Like if you can get double the amount for the job that you're working now, why wouldn't you like continue to work harder and stay the same when you get paid double the amount? Like there's way more motivation compared to having a metric. Yeah. Can you explain on how inflation will actually happen in Taiwan?
Because when people get UBI and then people spend more money than when like all the costs will rise up, so inflation will happen. But this will keep many years because this cycle, like if the government give UBI to the citizens, and it wouldn't be a short term, but instead this will like be a cycle.
Won't businesses adjust their supply levels when they see an increase in demand though? Assuming that this is long term.
But like people still
Okay, I'll ask the next question. So regarding like income inequality, doesn't the rich get taxed more compared to the poor?
rich like all people pay taxes, but rich people also get the UBI so that UBI isn't equal, like this isn't fair enough for the rich people because they pay taxes, but they pay more taxes than the poor people, but they get the same amount back for like with them. So
you're saying we should pay more?
Time. Summary. Do you need prep time?
Yes.
Tell me when to stop.
Yeah. to sum up our statements so far, one of our main statements is that the inflation might happen. So this is when governments spent approximately over $2.2 trillion New Taiwanese dollar to all the citizens per month. So if everyone gets rich, then money is become a less worthy. So this causes inflation because everyone gets richer. And next statement is that if UBI really helps with the poverty problem and help with the economic growth, it takes a lot of time when we can see the results of UBI. But however, the cost is so massive that we can't even maintain this kind of project for a long-term time. So if this project cannot be maintained for a long-term time, we can't even see the growth of economic or the solution to the poverty issues in Taiwan. And lastly, although rich people will pay those income back to the government by taxes, but rich people still keep a lot of it because the tax is charged by percentage. So if rich people already have a lot of money, 10,000 New Taiwanese dollars does not mean a lot to them. So if the government charges the tax by the percentage, only a very small amount of the UBI will actually return to government. So as a result, we still think that UBI is not a very good or beneficial way to solve the poverty problem in Taiwan. And our last statement is that Taiwan already have a lot of different welfare systems. So the welfare systems in Taiwan already can provide up to 19,000 New Taiwanese dollar per month to those who is below the poverty line. But however, UBI only gives 10,000 NT to those poverty people. So which means UBI compared to the welfare system Taiwan already have is not very useful and not very helpful for those who were below the poverty line. Thank you.
Can we take a minute of
Okay. Just tell me when to stop.
Interesting handwriting you have.
Very ugly handwriting.
Ugly, I said it was
Students
fun.
cannot read my handwriting.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Very straightforward to the point.
That's the word. I know. I can understand what I'm writing.
Yeah,
Sometimes
you
I
write
cannot.
good.
Sometimes I cannot. You can read this.
Okay.
Right? Okay.
Okay.
So, is everyone ready? Okay, time starts in 3, 2, 1, go. First on some roadmap. First, I'd like to go on through some clarifications and rebuttals, and second on impact calculus, and last weighing if I have time. Before I move to my speech, I'd like to take down the pros argument. So, first they tell us that UBI cannot solve poverty, and there's not a lot of people in poverty. First, we tell you that UBI will solve the root cause of poverty, which is solve behavioral issues at the core. Second, we tell you that UBI incentivizes people to invest in themselves. This provides a safety net, addresses mental health issues, and for some, we can make twice as much or even more money for the same amount of work. There's no reason why you wouldn't work harder. And third, versus welfare, people won't go above the poverty line because they need the benefits from welfare to keep going. Comparatively, unconditional money gives more motivation because it stops people from feeling restrained, which is the safety net. And also, they tell us that there's going to be we need like a huge budget, but we already gave you evidence by Jake Chung. The executive yuan yesterday approved official 2022 budget of $2.2491 trillion put forth by the central government, which focuses heavily on social welfare funding. I'm pretty sure we can use this money to like fund UBI, right? And also, they tell us that there's going to be economic decline, which is inflation. Inflation is when money increases in the market, which causes prices to go up. First, we never said that inflation wouldn't happen. We're saying that it will happen, but the time frame is short enough that it's worth it. Second, our plan mentioned in the first speech that we will inform businesses of UBI before implementing them, meaning that the businesses will anticipate the increasing demand by increasing supply. When supply and demand both increase, the GDP increases, and inflation will be as bad. Now going on to impact calculus. So magnitude, the impact is threefold. One, the status quo is not enough. We need an alternative. People in poverty should be our #1 priority because they're the ones that need the most help. Listen, we give the people in poverty free money to use for education, investment, etc. This helps boost the economy because we increase the workers in society, thus increasing the supply. The value in UBI is the flexibility. Two, we outweigh on magnitude because no matter what, the welfare trap will always exist on pro. We solve both the welfare trap and allow people in poverty to have the chance to rise up the social ladder and hierarchy. We have a larger scope as we raise the general economy and have more impact towards the most vulnerable stakeholders, which are people in poverty. Third, the marginal value that UBI has for poor people is significantly higher than the rich. $1,000 matters more for poor people because they will use all the $1,000. Now get on to probability. It is so much more probable for people to benefit from UBI. UBI is the only way to actually solve the problem of poverty because first, we give them the resources to climb up the social ladder. If they need education, UBI helps fund for school. We also give them money to invest and start businesses. This also helps increase GDP and economy. Second, it indirectly incentivizes people to break out of poverty through self-motivation and administrative efficiency. And now, because I have time, I'm going to do some weighing. Our best scenario is that we solve for every single thing, including like these people in poverty. But our worst, probably like inflation and income would even out, which means that there's no delta harm at all. Their best and worst is literally the same, which is the status quo. They do nothing about the current societal problems. At least we have a solution. This is why, please vote pro. Thank you. Open for cross.
Yes, open for anyone can do the crossfire.
Great crossfire.
Are you guys ready for cross?
Has to go up.
The con. Oh, sorry.
I'll start timer on your first word.
So you mentioned that the primary goal of UBI is to solve the poverty problem. So why you keep mentioning the problem of inflation if inflation harms the poor people? Because if inflation happens when the 10,000 new Taiwan stock becomes less worthy, so they can actually fulfill their basic needs with those money.
Okay, let me answer that real quick. First, I think we already made it clear that we're talking about inflation because we're supposed to answer your arguments, right? So we already mitigated the inflation argument in two ways. First, we tell you that the time frame of like inflation happening is going to be very small because there's going to be like a bridge between the gap, bridge and like transition towards a UBI world where everyone can benefit from this. We think that inflation is going to be small enough that we can overcome it. Second, we tell you that we already have like ways to mitigate this inflation. Our first in my first speech, I already tell you that we're going to have anticipation process, right? So these businesses will anticipate that there's going to be more people buying their products, so they're going to increase their supply. And when you increase the supply, it kind of like it mitigates the whole inflation argument because you're going to have to buy these. So when like people buy these things, you don't have to raise the prices because you have enough supply to like give to every single person. So this is why like the inflation is not going to happen as badly, because government, and plus we also have like government money. So your argument about how like you give it a money like worthing less is not true because the government can fund like trillions of dollars. You have a question? No. Okay. My question is. Okay. My question is, how are you going to change the societal like problem that welfare is not working as well as it should be right now?
What do you mean by not working as it should?
So we're telling you that welfare is basically like you have to be $30 and below to be in welfare, and you also need a job to be in welfare. But if you have a job, you're going to like overcome this 30 NTD like gap, right? Which means that you're probably not going to like be able to be in the welfare. So how do you solve this system where the poor literally can't get out of poverty because
saying that most people in Taiwan who actually need welfare is above the poverty line, so they don't actually get help.
Yeah, so that proves our point that there's no serious poverty problem in Taiwan that is necessary to spend so much.
No, we're
No.
saying that the poverty line in Taiwan is too low. Like Taiwan uses like a 1 point something dollars per day average, while most the middle income developed countries use like a $5.5 system, which means that
There's a $4
Yeah.
gap,
yes,
which is a lot. Which look like if you have like I don't know 31 NTD per day as your salary, you can't be like in the welfare program, which is really bad because probably you can't really afford food if you have 31 like NTD per day. So how are you going to solve like this current problem?
Time.
It's really yeah, that's fine.
Primary focus, con beauty prep time. You have about 1 minute and a half.
You can also put that.
Okay, time.
So in this debate, we have presented three main arguments against the implementation of universal basic income in Taiwan. Firstly, the cost of UBI would be too high and unsustainable, accounting for more than 70% of government's total expenditures. Secondly, a UBI may not be the most effective way to address poverty in Taiwan, as the government has already implemented policies such as a workfare program to alleviate poverty that can provide 9,000 NTD more compared to UBI to those poor people. Lastly, UBI may not effectively reduce income inequality and could even widen the gap between the wealthy people and poor people, as the inflation happens, where poor people have to spend more money to buy basic things like foods, and those foods usually are from those big company, which means those poor people spend their money of UBI to those rich people's pockets. And opponents have not effectively addressed these arguments. They have not provided sufficient evidence to prove that UBI is beneficial for Taiwan. While UBI may sound appealing to the surface, the cost of implementing and its potential negative consequences cannot be ignored. Furthermore, opponents do not have strong evidence from studies or from statistics to answer the issues of inflation, and that it could be overcome very quickly. Therefore, we urge you to vote against the implementation of UBI in Taiwan. It is not a sustainable or effective solution to address problems, poverty, and income equality in the country of Taiwan. Thank you.
I'll take my 2 minutes.
Okay.
Sorry. for Sonoma, first I'll do some impact calculus, second a tiebreaker, and third I'll weigh if I have time. So before going into impact calculus, let's just look at why the arguments don't stand. So first with cost. Our mechanism is that we tell people about this this UBI thing UBI first, so that they can anticipate for the cost of this policy. And also we tell you that UBI will actually generate more revenue in the economy, which I'll explain later on. So next, answering there can't solve poverty. So UBI actually solves poverty better than welfare because the current threshold for poverty is actually too low. There's a $4 gap difference between Taiwan and middle income developed countries around the world, which means that the welfare system is not able to help most of the people who need help in Taiwan, who are just above the poverty line. Note that we also have these programs in our world, so their benefits also exist on our side. Now moving on to inflation. The time frame for inflation is going to be much shorter. And because first of all, businesses can increase supply first to meet the demands, and second, over time, people will generate value to the economy as they can invest in the economy because they're capable. So in the long term, poor people will benefit more because the money is worth much more to them compared to the rich. And also, the other side never explained why inflation is necessarily bad, so we see no negative harms to this at all. And now moving on to the impact calculus. First on magnitude. People in poverty should be our #1 priority because they're the ones who need the most help. Listen, we give people in poverty free money to use for education, investments, and etc. This helps boost the economy because we can increase the workers in society and thus increasing the supply. We have a larger scope as we raise the general economy and have more impact towards the most vulnerable stakeholders, which are the people in poverty. The marginal value for UBI helps the poor significantly higher than the rich. And comparatively, the economy doesn't have any actual impacts because they never said why inflation is bad. Now moving on to probability. The probability is much higher on our side as characterized by our previous speeches. It is so much more likely for an individual to climb out of poverty if we give them incentive to do so. This looks like material benefits provided from UBI to give a financial safety net to fall on, so people are less hesitant to start businesses and begin climbing up the social ladder.
Alright. I need some time to tidy up.
Me too.
You are.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just saying.
You guys can go first if you're ready.
I can go.
Sure.
Alright. For me, I will go with Fuhsing Debate. I will start with first for IDK. You presented an argument about inflation. The thing that really gave you no leg, which is the idea of no exit plan, in a sense. It was just, you were repeating some of the same things over and over again, and not engaging with the information that the opposing team was giving you in a big way. For Fuhsing, please stop arguing both sides. Super simple. And speed. You guys gave factual points very on, just, you stuck with your argument, but it was just speed and you seeing both sides of the situation constantly. With, if a more enhanced team would have given you a problem.
Building up on that, I will tell you the decision in the very end, because I think both teams need some improvements. First of all, with IDK, I think you had a really good start. You caught my attention at the very beginning by saying something related to sustainability. And I really like your attack on them by saying how is the successful cases in UBI in other countries going to apply in Taiwan. That's very important because Fuhsing didn't actually explain very, all-rounded, like why successful cases in other countries can apply in Taiwan. So I really like that. But a comment on both teams is that I'm not sure if you guys are aware of the time, because for case and rebuttal you have 4 minutes, but you guys all spend like around 2 to 3 minutes for that. You have more time. You need to make use of the prep time. You have 3 whole minutes to search up for evidence to help your teammates to build up the case. Evidence is always going to help you. So what I think you guys can improve is on the evidence part, because at the very beginning you mentioned something like the poor people is going to use the money for basic need, but rich can use it to create more money. I need evidence on that. Poor people can also use whatever limited amount of money they have to create new things. In my, if I don't have evidence, I can easily counter-argue to that. And the other thing is, you asked something related to why do we have to tax the rich only? You asked that, right? Why do we have to tax the rich only more? I think that's a really good crossfire questions. And wait a second. Okay, one more thing. You guys mentioned something like the number of welfare in Taiwanese is like currently people can get 19,000 Taiwanese dollars, and then you mentioned something like for UBI they give extra 10,000 Taiwanese dollars. I would like to know why that is important to prove that UBI wouldn't help, because more money, obviously, if I am a poor person with more money, I'm more happy. So you have to prove a little bit more, like why isn't the extra $10,000 is not going to help? It's worthless amount of money, and you also have to prove how tax is not enough to pay for UBI. The tax that Taiwanese is having right now, why isn't that enough to cover if we want to have UBI in the future? Please also be clear on the welfare system that is going to help solve poverty. Give examples of the welfare system that Taiwan government is implementing now. What kind of welfare are they giving? Why does that prove that UBI is not worth mentioning? As for Fuhsing, clarify on the inflation point. I get what you are saying, something like, oh, it's small and it's big or whatever. Clarify how small, how it is worth it, how does it even out the amount. Go on, do research on that. And please draw connection between rich people pay more taxes than the poor. How does that relate to our topic today, UBI? Do a little more comparison. You guys, the structure is very good. You can learn from them, the structure-wise, by saying, okay, we are comparing on impact calculus. We are comparing magnitude. That's why, blah, blah, blah. But I think you guys can do a little better. At the very end, final focus part, you can say something like, that's why, for example, our poverty outweigh their points of inflation, because in our world, poverty obviously is more important than inflation, blah, blah, blah. I don't know how you're going to say that, but this is an example. Do comparisons among contentions. So for me, for this round, I will vote for Fuhsing. Okay, and then
Oh, okay. Because we're running out of time, I think I'll just give two comments in general. Number one, because we're talking about policy borrowing, right? Because UBI is not originally from Taiwan. So what both of the teams have to bear in mind is that whether or not this policy is feasible to be implemented in Taiwan. And I think that is something that you both are very lacking. You get lots of ideas about, okay, in Alaska we have this example. In somewhere else we have this example. But my question is, are those feasible to be implemented in Taiwan? To what extent those countries are different or similar to Taiwan in terms of, for example, the bureaucracy system, the population number, or like what other kinds of systems. So that is something that you really have to bear in mind, like to relate that to Taiwan. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, I think both of the teams also focus on the people from the disadvantaged group, like the one on the bottom level. But remember, this policy is not only for them. So what you could have done better is to show that this policy is also beneficial for people from other social or economic classes. For example, how can it also be beneficial to those who are coming from the upper income classes or the middle classes? So in that sense, you could have built a more like solid argument, because again, this is not only for one particular group of people. Well, although it's for them, it's for them in general, but still you have to explain more on the others, to include the other social and economic groups as well. So that is okay. And number three again. Sorry, one more. I think the idea of the welfare threshold is somehow interesting, because thank you for the positive thing for bringing that up. But again, as for the negative side of the house, sorry, you're the pro, right? No, the cons. The cons, sorry, my bad. You're the negative side of the house. You could have said that, yes, because I think that is their big idea that came a little bit later in their second speaker. Okay, but you could have said that yes, we know there is a $4 cap, but still Taiwan has a different conditions compared to those other countries, and we think even if with 1 point something poverty threshold is already enough to show like the current statistic of the current situations in Taiwan. And we think that the current status quo, like the current policies that the government has been implementing over the years, is already adequate to counter the solutions. Because I think you have a very strong argument on the idea that, we only have like 1% of people living below the poverty line. So why do we need to apply to implement this policy while like our current system has already been doing like great job? But you could have elaborated more and be proactive and more aggressive in the next round. Okay. So with that, I also give my decisions like to voting Fuhsing Debate. Congratulations.
congratulations.
Thank you.
Good job, guys.
Good job. Make use of the time. It's 4 minutes.
What do we get these two?
For me, it's
Oh, no.
oh
I'm just saying, who do we get?
I think they will collect it somehow.
Okay.
There should be. In my room, there were more than one committee.
Yes.